Welcome to Central Missouri Alumni Stories. I'm your host, Corey Bittner. Today, I am honored to be joined by Meryl Lin McKean. Meryl is an alumni of the University of Central Missouri, or Central Missouri State. Is more recently retired from Fox 4 here in Kansas City, where she worked for 31 years as a producer, a reporter, and also an anchor. And it's an honor to have her here today. I look forward to hearing a little bit more about your story, and I'm sure that our guests will also.
Great.
Our listeners.
Fun to be here.
So first off, I do appreciate your time and your willingness to kind of come on the show here today.
Thank you.
As a fellow board member, or a board director, I guess I should say, the UCM Alumni Foundation, it's always nice to have other board directors come on also, kind of talk about their story, where they've been, what they've done, and what they're doing now. So again, thank you. And to kind of get us started here, you obviously graduated from CMSU, but where did you grow up originally?
Well, I grew up in Warrensburg.
Oh, you did?
So
okay.
That's the first part of my story that's a little unusual in that UCM has always been a part of my life. In fact, our first house that we lived in was just off of College Street, only about 6 or 7 blocks from campus.
Okay.
And I went to Central Elementary, which was the laboratory school that the university had at one time, up through 3rd grade. And then I told my parents I wanted to go to the public school, so I went off to the Warrensburg schools.
Okay.
But then, of course, came back to UCM for my 4 years as an undergrad.
Okay, so you were born and raised then in Warrensburg there for college also. Now, did you always know that you would go to UCM?
No. In fact, my first semester, my freshman year, I went to another university out of state because I thought I wanted to go out of state to school, having grown up in a
spread
university
the wings,
town.
right? Yeah.
Right. But then I discovered that I really was homesick, first of all, and second, I knew that UCM had a really good programming in broadcasting, which of course was my interest, and I knew I had a Regent scholarship, which was basically a full ride to UCM.
Good for you.
So I came home, and I don't regret it.
Good for you. Where did you go for your first year?
I went my first semester to the University of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then came back. Okay, good. Now you studied then broadcast. Is that what your degree is in?
Broadcasting and film, and then I had 2 minors, one in speech comm and the other in journalism.
Okay.
So it really covered about everything involved in my career. And I also had some public relations classes, which in hindsight were really valuable because I would work with PR people 9 days out of 10 in my career as a TV reporter.
Okay. Now, when you were transferred back from Oklahoma, we're in school at UCM, what, I guess when you kind of look back on your time at UCM, what were, I guess, some of the highlights for you?
Well, I think just the rigorous instruction, the challenging teachers that I had then, and I'm hoping that the students have those now.
Sure.
I think they do. I remember Dr. Eshelman, David Eshelman, who was my advisor and also taught the mass communication law class, which was a very difficult class. But I will tell you that in my entire career, I never came close to being sued as a reporter. The station never came close to being sued because of me. And so I really credit Dr. Eshelman for that. And also people like Rick Whitaker, who was one of the broadcasting instructors. He had worked in big market television in places like San Francisco.
Sure. And
in meeting him and hearing his stories, I began to see myself in a big city newsroom. I'd always wanted to do that, but I think, it begins to become a reality when you're in college and when you have that really good instruction.
Okay, good, because that's what I was going to ask when you, I guess, broadcast film, presumably always had an interest in that.
Yes.
Did you know when you went off to school, did you know what you wanted to do?
Yes, definitely. I'm one of those strange little kids, or was one of those strange little kids who would watch the evening news, even at age 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And I had a little printing press. I would print a little newspaper,
really? Okay.
a little Mattel printing press. I don't think they make those anymore. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I always had a good idea. And when I was in high school, I competed in radio speaking, television speaking at speech tournaments, and that of course helped too. And then during my senior year in high school, I got a job at the radio station in Warrensburg, KOKO, doing news, and so it all began to happen for me.
Okay, that's pretty neat. When you were at school at UCM, at the time, was there a news show would probably be the wrong word to ask, but what kind of broadcasting were you doing as part of your studies?
Well, it was really my job, my paid job at KOKO. There were a few opportunities. I think they had some sort of TV station that just served the university.
Okay.
But I was really too busy with my paying job, to do that. And then around my senior year, the university purchased KMOS TV, which is, of course, is the PBS station to this day for Central Missouri that's owned by the university. And so I probably could have done a little bit there, but again, I was working at KOKO, I was preparing to graduate, so I was just a little too busy to do more.
Were you doing that were you working full time?
No, I was part-time. And of course, I also had other activities such as sorority. I was very involved in Delta Zeta sorority and things like that.
Sure, that's good. What was your first job out of college?
I worked at a television station in the Quad Cities of Iowa and Illinois. It was WOC-TV in Davenport, Iowa. And I went right to work as a television news reporter.
You did? Okay, right out of school.
Straight out of school, yeah.
Good for you. How did you feel, particularly when you first started doing that, how did you feel on a level of preparedness from your studies when you were at school at UCM?
I guess as prepared as any 22-year-old can be.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty overwhelming to be on television.
I can imagine.
Because all of a sudden, people are recognizing you in the community, and especially back then when television viewership was much higher than it is now.
True.
And you had many fewer outlets. And so people didn't have as many choices, and they were watching you. So that part of it was a little difficult. I think as far as the writing, I was well prepared. Editing, the video editing, I needed to become a little more skilled at that because I'm by nature not a techie. And so that was a challenge to me initially, although over the years, I think I became a pretty good video editor too.
How long were you with the station in Davenport?
Just a little over a year because I knew I wanted to jump to a bigger market, which is what you do. You try not to stay too long in the smaller market. And the Quad Cities was around the 72nd television market then. So I moved up to Tulsa, which Tulsa was in the low 50s at that time. And I stayed there for 4 years. I really loved Tulsa at the ABC station. And then I came to Kansas City.
Okay, and when you first came to Kansas City then, what was your first job with Fox 4? As a
reporter. I was always a reporter, yeah. And I did the health and medical for the vast majority of my career, which was great to have that specialty. In these days, there isn't as much specialty reporting. It sort of went by the wayside with the recession, when television stations had to cut back about 11 years ago.
Right.
And so I was very fortunate, though, that I had already built up that brand, as the health reporter in Kansas City, and I was able to retain that. And so really almost my entire career in Kansas City was spent specializing in health and medical news.
Really? Okay. That's pretty interesting. And it sounds like that's probably not a specific position, or there's not a specific person that's doing the same thing now. It's all changed.
Well, to a much lesser degree. They have an anchor who will read the health headlines on the evening news, and they do. The anchors read some of that copy in the newscast. But to have someone who was designated and who did packaged reports, as I did, where I was out in the field, if you will, every day at hospitals, at clinics, wherever. There isn't really anyone like that in Kansas City now, and I regret that. That's one thing that I regret about retirement, is that no one in Kansas City is really focusing on health and medicine, because it's so important, obviously, to each of us.
Right. Now, presumably there's viewer interest, right? It's more a matter of resources.
Yeah, all the research shows that health and medicine rates very high. In fact, some of the studies show that it's right behind weather in terms of what's most important to viewers.
Sure. What was of all the years that you were on TV, right? What was the hardest part about that?
The deadlines. Even though I was very good at meeting deadlines, there's that stress, that pressure that comes with it virtually every day. And I think in some ways there is even greater stress for reporters now because of all the social media requirements that go along with the TV part of it.
Yeah, it seems like that's the case. I mean, I know now just from following, the news on social media, but it's on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else, right?
And it isn't just a daily deadline now. It's almost a minute-by-minute deadline with your story.
What, looking back on your career, or even going back even to when you were in college, if you look back on that, if you could do anything differently now, what do you think you would have done differently?
Honestly, I probably would have had more fun in college.
Really?
I think I took it much too seriously.
Yeah.
And because I had that part-time job and I would go in the evenings to city council, school board meetings, those sorts of things, I missed out on parties, things that you don't have the opportunity once you graduate, as much of an opportunity to do.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, for anybody who is watching or listening to this, right, who hasn't yet gone off to college, it's important to remember to have fun, but also remember while you're there, right? Prioritize.
You need to find that balance. As a health reporter, I learned over time that everything is about balance, variety, and moderation.
Yeah, right.
So those three I would recommend.
Yeah, I tried to avoid the abundance, right, or the excessiveness. Yeah, it's good. When did you retire?
I retired 3 years ago.
Okay.
I was still in my 50s. It has been wonderful, much greater than I ever imagined it would be, in fact.
Really?
Yeah, I think anyone goes into it with a little bit of trepidation. You think, after being so busy all these years, what am I going to do? But I found some great ways to fill my time, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Really? Now, did you have any kind of, I guess the transition from employment to retirement, was there, were you basically working until you retired, or did you kind of scale it back in terms of work before you made that transition?
I knew for about the last year that I was ready, which was good, if you know that, because you can kind of have more fun in that last year.
Yeah, right.
I didn't take anything quite as seriously as I would have in the past. And I don't know if my coworkers noticed it or not, but I certainly felt it.
Did you?
That I was having more fun, that I was really enjoying it. And no, I went straight from working one day to not working the next. And of course, the first month, it does feel like a vacation. And then after that, you think, okay, I need to find some things to do with my extra time, and I have.
Sure. Now, obviously your involvement now with the university, right? So you joined the board in 2019, right?
But I was already on the advisory board for the digital media production program, which of course is what broadcasting once was. And I've done that for about 3 or 4 years now. Okay. And then I'm also now serving on the advisory board for KMOS TV for the PBS station.
How's that been?
It's great. It's great. I've learned a lot. Even though the station is based in Warrensburg on the UCM campus, it's actually in the Columbia, Jefferson City television market. And it covers a huge area. Yeah, it covers a huge area of central Missouri.
What does it look like being on the advisory board? What's involved in that?
Well, we meet on a quarterly basis, and the general manager and others just share with us the direction of the station, what they're doing as far as local programming, and then also the other programming to fill in the gaps that they get from various sources, including, of course, PBS. And then we advise them on what we think is working, what's not working. We make suggestions as far as fundraising, because that's a big part. And you may not know, Corey, even that the television station is under the foundation as far as donations to the TV station go through the foundation.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
Or if I did, I don't remember off the top of my my mind here. Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, do you think, I'm sure you probably do have an opinion, but what are your opinions or thoughts about, frankly, the future of broadcast journalism, the challenges that are going to be there, and if somebody was getting ready to go off to college now, if somebody's getting ready to go to UCM, study to try to follow a career path that looked similar to yours, what would you tell them?
Well, you need this wide variety of skills, and I do think that UCM offers that in the digital media program, but you need to know how to write. Writing is always going to be the foundation for anything, regardless of whether you're a reporter or in any other area of media. You need to know how to write. And even if you're just going to be a play-by-play broadcaster, for example, writing is so valuable to you because you learn how to create a beginning, a middle, and an ending. You know, how to be a storyteller. And that will help you in so many ways throughout life. So I think that's critically important and always will be. But even more so now, the technical skills. You know, that ability to shoot your own video, which I never did. You know, as a reporter, I always had a photographer with me. But these days, the trend is more toward multimedia journalists, meaning you write, you shoot, and you edit, all three. Whereas I had 2 of those 3 skills in my career.
Really? Yeah, that's it's obviously going to be just more of a challenge, right? Or there's going to be more technical skills required in order to excel.
Right, and you need to learn how to write for the different mediums, whereas I had that ability to write for broadcasting, to put pictures and sound with the words in a creative way. These days, you also have to know how to tell it in a nutshell, you know, for Twitter. Just all of that is a lot more, you know, complicated and involved than it was years ago.
I can imagine so, and probably the digital media program, right, at UCM it's obviously probably changing every year, every semester.
I do know for a fact that they're preparing kids for all of those different forms of writing, which it really is, you know, different forms.
Sure. Yeah, that's a lot to learn, but you know, if it's something like you obviously feel feel passionate about it, it's good that they have you there to be able to.
And that's key. You've got to have the passion, probably with any career, but especially if you're going to get into media, you really have to love it because it's challenging in a number of ways. Not only the deadlines, but the hours that you work.
Right.
And,
what did that look like for you? I mean,
I was fortunate in that most of my career I worked 9 to 5:30. But I will tell you that in broadcasting, I have worked every hour except midnight to 3 a.m.
Really?
I never worked the midnight to 3.
Good.
But I did early morning news as an anchor for a time, and you know, would have to be at work by 4:30 in the morning, and that's a challenge.
I bet so. What was your favorite? I guess what did the best work day look like to you?
The 9 to 5:30, and just having a really powerful story to share with the viewers about someone's health condition. You know, perhaps it was someone who was losing his or her battle with a disease, or it could be someone who was winning that battle. You know, those sorts of stories. You know, explaining what the disease was, telling the viewer what he or she needs to know about the side effects of treatments, about the diagnosis, the warning signs of a disease. All of those things are just really important, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, what level of responsibility, or I guess that'd be the right word, was it of yours to come up with the stories that you're going to be covering?
It was solely my responsibility. I mean, every once in a while, my bosses would come to me with a story idea, but they knew, especially as the years went on, that I was on top of this. You know, this beat was my beat, and that I knew what I was doing. And I'm pretty independent, and that can be valuable. It can also be a hindrance at times because obviously it's a team effort too in broadcasting. But you know, I love that relationship with the photographer. You know, he and I talking over how are we going to tell this story, and then getting it done in that day's time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing that because I can just I can imagine what it would be like. And now that it probably doesn't. When we're thinking about retirement and the road ahead, it probably doesn't feel like it's been 3 years. For you, or does it?
In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. Yeah, because so much has changed at Channel 4 just in the 3 years since I left. You know, people come and go pretty quickly in broadcasting still, even though I stayed forever. but yeah, in some ways it does seem like it's been a long time. But just today, when I came up here for lunch before we met, I went in a restaurant and there were several people there who recognized me from TV.
That's pretty neat.
And that feels good since it's been 3 years now.
Sure. Now, you mentioned how retirement's been, I guess, better maybe than you thought it was going to be. My question was going to be, how has it sort of met your expectations? And I think you've kind of already answered that one. But what's been different than what you expected? I don't know I know it's probably kind of hard to frame what you think life is going to look like when you're not working anymore. But how has retirement been different than what you maybe thought it was going to be? or has it been?
I don't know that anything has shocked me. You find that you need to be disciplined still in finding things to do each day that are important, that are valuable to others. And so I've really reached out in the community now that I've returned to Warrensburg and live in Warrensburg again. I've really tried to find things that are meaningful, to myself and to others. And in some ways that's been a little more challenging than I thought it would be, but I'm getting there. And I've learned that if you try something and you don't like it, the great thing about retirement is you can say, sorry, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Whereas with a job, that's a little hard to do.
Not so simple, That's a lot of trial and error, right? It really is. So, well, good. And what, looking ahead, what does that look like? I mean, what do you see in the next, 1, 2, 3, 5 years? What do you kind of see yourself maybe getting involved in that you haven't had a chance to yet, or what do you kind of envision moving forward?
Well, I'm becoming more involved in my church now. I'm becoming the lay delegate from my church to the annual conference of the United Methodist Church, and that's going to be a big responsibility. But I will continue my work with the university, obviously. I love it. I think it is, again, meaningful. It really is to give back, because this university and the town of Warrensburg, too, gave me so much. And I feel like the least I can do with my time and my talents is to serve there.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I know that they're, I can speak for, the board of the Alumni Foundation, of course, and I'm happy to, and honored to be serving alongside with you. And I know that they're fortunate to have you, and I know that you're going to, give it your all and do your best there to give back. So thank you for that. I'm going to kind of switch gears here a little bit and move into our next segment that we're calling the Mule Minute, or the Jenny Jam is what someone else has named it. And it's kind of our lightning round here, so I'm just going to fire off a couple of questions at you. I really just kind of want your initial thoughts, your really kind of the first answer that pops into your head, just kind
and
of
quick,
fun here.
Right?
Yeah, and quick if you can. Yeah, we don't have a stopwatch or anything, but I have 9 or 10 questions that we try to rattle off in a minute or two here. But are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Here? Okay, so we'll start off easy. First, what is your favorite destination?
The next one, which is going to be Europe in March.
Excellent. That's good. What's your favorite way to unwind or relax?
Sports. I'm a huge sports fan, and if I had not been a health and medical reporter, I probably would have been a sports reporter.
Really? Okay, good. I want to come back to that. What did day one of retirement? Do you remember what you did?
A little bit of nothing.
A little bit of nothing. Good for you. What's one thing that you wish you would have learned earlier in life or in your career?
Again, just enjoy each moment. And I am a cancer survivor, and so that lesson didn't really come home until I was probably in my mid to late 40s when I was diagnosed. After that, I learned to live more in the moment and enjoy each moment.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you, and being present, right? That's so important. If somebody was a senior in high school and they were contemplating what college that they wanted to go to, why would you tell them, why UCM?
Absolutely UCM, because it offers everything. It's not too big, not too small, has great class sizes, a beautiful campus, lots of amenities that I think kids want and need in today's world, and just a really well-rounded social life is possible there.
That's good. No, I like it. And moving back to Warrensburg, right? You're clearly an advocate of the town and the school.
Absolutely.
If you walked into an establishment and you had to karaoke one song, what would be the song that you'd sing?
Kansas City.
Okay, there you go.
I'm in Kansas City.
There you go. That's a good one. Now, if you could go back in time, not just in your life, but any period in history, if you could travel back to one specific time period in history, when would you like to go see?
Briefly, probably the Civil War, just because it was such an awful, trying time in this country. And as a reporter, there would have been a million stories to share with viewers if there had been television then. And I feel this kind of closeness affinity to my great-grandfather, who was a Union soldier in the Civil War, even though I never met him. So that would be my pick.
Sure. What is one profession that you always wanted to try other than your own?
Probably the sports play-by-play part of it.
Okay.
Now that would have been really interesting to do play-by-play.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your proudest accomplishment?
Just being a good daughter and a good sister, that matters the most to me. Even though I'm not married and I don't have children, just being a good family member matters the most.
That's good. What is one, I'll kind of, last question here. What is one piece of advice that you would give someone? It doesn't have to be someone who's a senior in high school, but anybody for that matter. What's the one phrase or expression or piece of advice that you like to give, or you think is critical?
I have a bracelet that has on it, God never allows pain without a purpose, and I truly believe that.
That's good. That's good. Well, thank you for participating there. You did a good job.
Thank you, Corey.
I know you can obviously handle having some questions rattled at you here in front of the camera, but thank you for that. I did want to come back though. You mentioned sports. Presumably you're a pretty big fan of the Kansas City sports teams?
I am.
Okay.
And also the Mules and Jennies.
Sure.
I'm there at almost every home game, whether it's football, basketball, baseball too. I love all three of those.
What's your favorite one? Do you have a favorite sport?
At the professional level, it's baseball.
Okay.
I've always been a huge Royals fan, or at least since '69. At football, at the college level, nothing can beat that. And then probably basketball at the high school or college level.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe there'll be the play-by-play gig will be somewhere in your future, right? You never know, right?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Who will give me a chance?
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, again, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show here today, and I think that our listeners and viewers will really enjoy the conversation and the discussion. So.
Well, I appreciate it, Corey.
Yeah, of course. Thank you again. And just as a reminder for those of you that are either watching on YouTube or listening wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts, the Central Missouri Alumni Stories show on YouTube has moved. So it has its own channel now. So if you're on YouTube and you just search Central Missouri Alumni Stories, or your Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, please feel free to subscribe, rate, give the show a follow, whatever you think it might be. And of course, I'm always open to any feedback. If anyone has any thoughts or conversations that they'd like us to have with other guests, or suggested guests for the future. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I can be found on pretty much every social media platform. I guess not everyone, but Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook I'm active on. And my email address is corey@falconwealthadvisors.com. So again, Merlyn, thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate your time, and Happy New Year.
You too.
And Happy New Year.